I travel around Europe last year 120 days in a lot of different countries, talking about BIM. What is it? What can it do? What will it do? What is BIM? Don't use the word BIM. Use digitalization instead. There's a lot of things. Based on who you are, this is very important. And I have to say something to you guys. Italian companies work outside of Italy. So I think the standardization work going on in Europe, especially in CEN 442, is of high importance. So it was mentioned, leaders need to take a part of this. So this is critical for everyone. Manufacturers, merchants, especially architects, specifiers, contractors. The way you actually build today, everything will be affected. So the question is what to do in practical life. We started working with this issue with understanding data structure, and I'm focusing on non-geometrical data. So everyone here has been talking about geometrical data, checking geometrical data. I'm talking about non-geometrical data. That is used today by specifiers, and that is used where manufacturers today store this information. So where do a manufacturer have this information? In PDFs. This will change. And the approach for projects will change a lot. So Italian companies wants to work out of Italy, don't only focus on Italian standards, focus on European standards, and even outside Europe, a lot of things are happening. It was mentioned Chinese, so we're a Building Smart International member. I see a lot of going on, especially in the infrastructure area, and people need to pay attention because things are happening. Okay, I'll start my presentation. I was asked to talk about, we are doing work on standardization product data in Europe on European level. So from Norway, we have suggested a way of defining, let's say, the DNA structure for products. And when you put them together, it's a building. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. That's a part of the CEN standardization work. And also, since UK were far ahead any other country where clients, and I think you're missing out on this in Italy, as many countries do, to have clients actually asking for the right things. So the UK government mandated in April last year to deliver something called COBE. It's just, let's say, a briefcase. It's a way of transporting information. And that, along with a lot of the other PAS standards that has been mentioned here today, means that contractors and clients have to think differently. So the way that they were working, they were asked by the government, you can't work like that because you have to differentiate between geometric data, information, and documents. And you have to set something called employer's information requirements, which is the data I need to plan, to build, and to operate. So we went to the biggest companies, sat around the table with the 10 largest contractors. We have been working with the Ministry of Justice to try to understand and to implement. That means hard work. That means discussions. That means pointing. That's making mistakes. But that's actually finding a new way. Cobely, we are a small company. We grew from 50 to 100 people last year, and now I'm hiring 5 to 10 people every month. So it's growing quite fast, and we're working a lot with open standards. That's what we think is very important. Data, it was mentioned data. I think that you will see that data is surrounded. I just bought myself a new watch. It comes from Apple, and it actually tells me how many calories I've burnt, and it tells me something. It's quite new. I thought it was, wow, impressive. So now 352 calories. So this is collecting data, and they know about me, and this is everything. So if you understand what this means, that means that you know who installed it, you know what it is, you know easily how to replace it, you will talk to manufacturers' databases, and everything will be interlinked. You will automatically purchase, let's say, Windows from 52 projects at the same time. There will be no salespeople working with selling Windows in Italy. All the people working with purchasing on construction site, they will be affected. So this data change will affect a lot. So big data, everyone's talking about it, but the construction industry, they are lacking behind. I just took up this because this is digitalization. It's done by McKinsey, and the only, if you look at the sectors that have gone digital, if you go down, you will see construction. So we have agriculture and hunting. So we're better than them. So that means that we have something to do. So remember that today we've done a lot on design, but that's not the scope. That's not to go digital. So I started in 20 years ago working with this. We moved from paper to PDF on CD-ROM in 1997. That was a big, we asked the architects, what do you want, CD-ROM or internet? The answer was CD-ROM. Strange, but true. We work a lot in Europe in standardization, especially this. And you need to understand the difference between 3D and data. And this is maybe the hardest sell ever, to understand what data is and what interoperability is. That data can behave as with different formats and languages. It could be stretched and bent, but it's possible to make it machine readable. And that's where the change is going to happen. The national approaches very often are based on, as they are in Norway, based on, let's say, the model approach. What made the UK initiative different is that they were thinking in another way. They had an information approach. So I recommend strongly, I think it was said by Ilka, that a lot of things are coming from already existing standards. So I think on strategy, if you're a big company, especially if you're a big company, you should read the past standards from the UK. Because if you understand them, then you understand the scope of what we're talking about. In SEN, it was mentioned, there's a lot of standardization work. I think the Building Smart standards are now European standards, especially IFC. Understand what IFC is. It's not only geometric data, it's also all the information you need. So it fills a big gap. But this standard is very important also. It's the dictionary. It's the one that translates the language to Italian, for instance, which is good. So you don't have to read every standard in German or Norwegian or whatever. So I think this standard, IFD standard, is very important. And it's using something called Building Smart Data Dictionary, which is an implementation. Cobular, we have been working in this area, and we've been working with the French guys that has been developing a process on agreeing upon a property. This seems very strange, but it's not. Imagine if you could agree, everyone here, what we're talking about. So if I say something, we could agree. So in a project, we could agree on what's what. And that scope, and if you put in language with that, so that means that no matter language you speak, and if you put in a machine also, that a machine understands it, that's the scope of these standards. So we're working with the manufacturing industry, we're working with associations in Europe and so on. And in late this year, it will come out, hopefully, a standard on how to create these data sets. And this is what I saw, so I only have now 30 people working on creating these data sets. So where product data, where does it come from? You don't invent it. And that's the mistake. I think the INNOVANCE project has been involved in this in Italy. So when you actually understand where the information comes from, it comes from already existing standards. So don't try to invent. And that's what Revit does, ArchiCAD, all these software actors, they invent properties, they put name on it and say this is it. But that's not, according to Italian law, you're following EU laws, so that's fine. Especially in Norway are. So there is already regulations and directives. So there is a process, an agreed process now in Europe on how to define data. I won't go into it, but it takes in European level and European standards like CEN, CENELEC and things like that, ISO standards on environmental product declarations data, that's a part of it. And it takes in national standards and market requirements, like if you have any specific requirements for market issues here in Italy. An example, a window. These are properties like water tightness, airborne insulation. This is for instance, very important on airports. Air permeability. All this has national standards, test standards, and in Italy, these exist because they're the same all over Europe. So don't run over the don't try to find this, it's already there. On the environmental data, there's already existing in the EPD data. So there are properties that are European, and the suggested standard is to link this to IFC. I'll show later on using Building Smart Data Dictionary how it's done. So then there is a European context, which is the same. So it's the same where I come from and where you come from. There is no difference. The only difference that you have Italian standards implementing them. I have Norwegian standards. But if clients start to understand this, that's where things is starting to move, because then you see that your market is European, if you understand actually just what I'm showing here. So on top, you could have national requirements. That could be anything. So there are different building rules in Europe, of course, but it's based on the same, again, rules. So there are national requirements, and there is also national classifications. I want to make a warning. There are, as we see now, for now we found 22 classification schemas in Europe. And use classification for what it's meant to be used for. Don't classify things that are already classified in standards. This is what you're missing. This is what we are here in Italy trying to convince the Italian market. You need to create what you would call a national context. That means that all actors will talk the same language, and you will not be competing on the wrong things. You will be competing on software, on implementation, on how you work, anything else than actually the data and how the data is built. In UK, we're working with something called Lexicon, which is implementing a common data set for, let's say, a window, that all actors shall use: architects, specifiers, manufacturers, merchants, contractors, clients, anyone. By using these data sets, this will mean that architects and specifiers will not spend so much time on the specifying. So, of course, they have to look at this and understand what it means for them. On legislation, there are, as I said, there are a lot of different important regulations. Everyone would know the construction product regulation, but you also have the low volt directive, you have REACH for chemicals, and you have a lot of directives. That is just implementing this. So for a chemical, it's called safety data sheet. That's all the information. It's all the chemicals, it's all hazard, it's everything is in this. So when you create that as data, that's where you can start to use a smartphone. So we're working with massive manufacturers in Europe now that are changing their approach. Soon you can purchase a brick on your phone and you don't know which location that will fabricate it. It's been done now, but it's actually understanding that you need to put people in front of your value chain. So construction product regulation states only that whatever you build, all the products and the essential characteristics for the buildings are linked. So this is why this is very advanced to understand this. That's why you need to spend time to understand what this is all about. Anyone heard about IFC? One hand in the air. IFC. 1, 2, yeah. There's, let's say, 30%. IFC is a new European standard. It was shown by many today. It's a way of saving, let's make it easy, saving data from BIM software into a format which is open, which has data fields so that all the different software systems could actually deliver a format where everyone could use it openly. And you could embed, let's say, the architect model and the engineering model together. That's IFC. But IFC also holds data like thermal transmittance. So if you go in Revit, it's called heat transfer coefficient. It's a different word. Why? Because it comes from the in the US. The US call it heat transfer coefficient. In ArchiCAD, it's called U value. In Danish, Norwegian, and Polish, different. In Italian, different. This is interruptible data. That's why you need something to link it. It doesn't matter. You can name it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. That's data. It doesn't matter. Call it what you want. If you want to classify it, do it. No problem. So the scope of using building smart data dictionary is to take this common context as I showed. Then you put in IFC window with all the properties, and then you just link the ones. You link it, so it could behave. The data changes. It's like a chameleon. So then this new standard is also mapping all the manufacturer's data, all the specification to IFC. I spoke to the guy, interesting guy, that invented the template for hotels. Guess what he did? He went around Europe asking hotels, this is many years ago, do you have a swimming pool? Yes. How many beds do you have? 22. Is it twin, queen, or whatever? And he made a template. Guess who's using that today? That template. One template. Google. Who else? Everyone. What has that meant for digital change? So then why standardize? Why standardize properties so that people could interact and do what they want? Take out the information they need, check the information they want, and distribute it. Why? And this is the key. This is what we're working on, to make this go from the traveling industry, planes, hotels, and so on, into the construction industry. So if you understand this, this is just a way of, this is purchasing. It's a different view, but it gets you to understand. But in this way, I could calculate, I can take out all the embedded carbon in steel, in concrete, whatever, because I have available data, because there is a standardized template, everyone agrees upon it, here it is, use it. So, sorry, the digital gap. We asked, in 8 countries, this is an EU project we were working on, we asked the contractors, do you know anything about the products you install? Do you have any clue? Could you just please, do you have a system, or do you have any knowledge? We're trying the best we can, but the answer mostly is no. And when we ask them, do you know if the windows you have installed have the right U value? Then they start to laugh. Not possible. So that means that you're specifying, but you're not checking. Yes, we're not checking. Are you checking what the subcontractors are taking in? No. So you have control. I trust them. If there's something wrong, I will sue them. That's the answer. So the digital gap, how could we actually close it? That's by agreeing on what's what. To agree. I come from Norway. This is how we work. We work together to try to make something good. So that's what I think is important on European level and in Italy. So, interruptible data. We spoke to Skanska in the UK. This was 15 months ago. We asked them, what data do you need? What data do your clients need? And he said, I have 3 types of clients. I have the governmental actors. I have the ones that is not asking for anything. And I have the hospitals and the big ones that are asking for very specific data, and they're very strict towards us. So they understood that they had to go around their company and set some data requirements. What's this? So in the beginning, we used Excel. This was, and for us, it's moving quite fast. So we gave them 10 product data templates, and then they went around to the environmental people in Skanska asking, what kind of information is important for you? And they ticked it off. This is important for me. And then they went to the people that were doing facility management. What's important for me? I want the name of the manufacturer, I want the barcode, I want the manufacturer's name, and so on. And when they went around their own company, then they started to talk to clients. What do you need? What do you need? This is practical implementation. And in your companies, this is what you have to do. And if you don't do it, you'll end up asking what kind of information is relevant for a pump. And this is actually when you get the data in front of you. And this is, we're doing a big hospital in Norway now, and we're working with infrastructure in the UK. HS2, we're working for the Welsh government. And it's only when you put practical examples in front of people, then you start to ask, do I need a warranty date? Yes. Okay, so tick it off. So by doing that, we're collecting data on what's important, what these other guys think is important. Maybe it's important over here also. So we learn. So this is the approach. It's just going. This is simplified. We use online tools for this now, but this just shows manufacturer's data, geometric data, performance data, operation maintenance data, and so on and so on and so on. So this is just standardizing it and asking what kind of information do you need. And now we're working with a lot of the contractors because for now, they've just been pushed by the clients. So again, what kind of requirements is coming out in Italy, I don't know. But what I do know, don't think so much about what clients now are asking for. Think about the possibilities to go to market outside of Italy. Because if you implement and you start to think like this, you will get new markets, for sure. So we have developed then a tool to collect data on construction sites. It's called Product Exchange. You invite, it's like LinkedIn, you invite project partners, and then you collect data. The whole point is that you have defined what kind of data you would like to collect. It's based on the data requirements, so it could be like this. What kind of information do a janitor need? Different. So this is just an example. different use of the same data. So different people will need different types of data. And this is non-geometrical data. This is the data you would need. So when you go, the next time you have trouble, what kind of information would you see? In my world, you will just report that back, and then you have collected it, and the next time you will collect it. BIM software. I don't know if it's a very delicate and it's very, let's say, there are two different issues, geometric data and information. But what I can say is that this data, if you have a barcode in my world, you click it. If it's a window, then automatically a Revit user would see that this window is installed. That's my world, but that's information linking to the geometric information. I only have 2 minutes now. BIM catalogs. Manufacturers, they need to create BIM. Let's not call it BIM because they use things like SAP. They need to structure their data and make their data available. So that means that if you would like to ask what kind of window has a U value and a fire rating and blah, 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 automatically you will see it's 22, like in the traveling industry. And this is what we're doing. So we're working with Lafarge, Holcim, we're working with Knauf, Wienerberger, a lot of early movers, early adapters that is now understanding that they need to structure their data. And the data is used to label, to make leaflets, brochures, and so on, but it's a very important thing also for architects to automatically search in 2,500 manufacturers' catalogs at the same time. Boom! Who can deliver things tomorrow? 2, 3, 4. So manufacturers' data is very important, and this is then possible. For what we did with the Ministry of Justice is that we set the data requirements for the window. So a data template consists normally about 150 properties, but if you click Ministry of Justice requirements, it's 12. These 12 properties is important, is mandatory for Ministry of Justice. So if you're a client, then you can specify exactly what kind of information you'd like in a different system. Because you have a system, you'd like to have to store the information there, but you have to collect it on site. So this is the last two ones. You need to check. When you have data, you can check. So either you just check that you have data, or you can check the U value of 1.0. Two different schemas. And that's where we use our tool called Product to Change to do so. And also, if you want to calculate, say, let's say, embedded carbon, this is the approach. You collect the data, how much carbon is A1 to A3, for instance, for people knowing EPD information. Then you would automatically collect that information if you have the how many kilos or cubic meters or what the functional unit is. Then you have to deliver. So to deliver data, I think that's the approach that I think is important, that you should decide, a client should decide on a good system, and the information should be stored there or linked there. It's a big discussion between linking and actually having all the data, because it's a lot of data. So there's a lot of work being done on linked data, but I think that you need to control and understand what you have built. That's the case, and that you have all the information. So if I were a computer now and I said to this room, show me all products that has a warranty date that expires in 6 months. And then automatically in this room I would say this window and this window, whatever. I would have total control of my information. So then you integrate this with your software. So that's kind of the approach. So yeah. Change involves everyone. And as I always say, you can now choose the next 6 months, let's say 12, as a company or as an employee. But if you're a good employee, then you should go to the management saying, we should. Because if you do that, you're thinking on behalf of your company. And then you're not thinking about yourself. The company need to lift. And if the company is not prepared for this, you will see it just coming. Then clients will ask for this. You will not be a part of it. You will not understand it. So I think that's a big threat. So be a part of the change. Thank you.